All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all, and welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we will cross this time-space continuum that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And you're listening to us on the X Zone Broadcast Network and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM, right here in St. Catharines, Ontario. That gets us into the entire province of Ontario, streamed live around the world and on your AM dial in the upper state of New York and Pennsylvania. My guest this hour, explanation, is Ruth Roper WYLDE, and she is a paranormal researcher and author. And she's coming to us all the way across the big pond in the United Kingdom. And Ruth, welcome to the X Zone.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to be back.
Yeah, Ruth, tell us a little bit about yourself for the listeners who weren't with us the last time you were on.
So I'm a paranormal researcher and author, as you said. I got interested in the paranormal when I was a kid living in a house with a really active poltergeist. And it made me want to find out more about paranormal and so on. Mm-hmm. And skip forward a few years, and I started writing my books in 2016, and I've just released book number 10 a couple of months back, which was my first venture across to America to write books. All my other books have been UK-centric, but they're all about people's own personal experiences with the paranormal.
Why did you want to write about the paranormal?
Because I was so fed up. You've got to remember, I'm of the old of a variety. I'm getting on a bit in years. So I come from an era before computers were a thing. So if you wanted to find out any information, you had to go to a library, you had to read a book, pick up a magazine, whatever. And there I was living in a very actively haunted house with a very active poltergeist. And when I picked up books to try and read about the kind of thing that was happening in my house, what I actually found was lots and lots of books about clanky old ghosts in clanky old castles and headless horsemen and wailing white ladies and, lady so-and-so last saw this ghost in 1732. And I just was not interested in stories that old. I wanted to read about real stories of people just like me, living in a house or whatever, going about their daily business and bumping into the paranormal, whether they liked it or not. And it just sparked a lifelong fascination for me of looking for stories of people that are experiencing the paranormal now, within my lifetime. And I kind of had this vague idea I'd like to write about it one day. So I started collating the stories, originally on an actual card file, and then eventually, when computers became a thing, onto computers, onto databases. So I now have my ghost databases. And when I was able to take partial early retirement back in 2016, I thought, right, this is my chance. I can write a book. And that's what I wanted to write. I wanted to write the kind of book that somebody like me growing up could read and find out about not just the history of the area or, the haunting, but whether or not people were actually still experiencing it.
Why, in your opinion, are some locations haunted and others aren't?
See, I'm not so sure. I would agree that some are and some aren't. I sometimes think it's more about timing. So it seems to me that some places are haunted for a little while and then not. Some places seem to stay haunted for decades, but the haunting is few and far between. Other places seem to stay haunted for decades, but the haunting is almost continuous. And then I've even got places where the haunting was sporadic. It seemed to hit for a while, then go quiet, then pick up again. And I wonder if it's more to do with the right person hitting the right moment in time in the right place, to sort of, experience the haunting that's kind of happening anyway.
In your experience over the years, where has been the most haunted location that you yourself have been present at when paranormal activity was occurring?
I think for the most, when it was actually occurring, if we discount my own house, which got me interested in the first place,
Right.
I think the next for actually occurring whilst I was present would probably be a place called Elstone Moot Hall here in Bedfordshire, where I live. Bedfordshire is a county in the UK. It's about 50 miles north of London. And Elstone Moot Hall is a very, very old building. I wouldn't like to guess its age, but it's a good couple of 300 years old, whatever. And you can sometimes, if you're lucky enough, you can get on an overnight ghost hunt there. It's a strange little building because it's just 2 stories, more or less 2 rooms per story, 1 big room, 1 little room, and it's set in its own little grassed area in the middle of what is now a modern housing estate, but originally would have been the centre of the village many, many years, centuries ago. And it's really all that remains of the oldest part of the village. So there are some older properties around that green and a church nearby that's obviously old, but this moot hall kind of stands on its own in the middle, all that remains. And I went on an overnight ghost hunt there. It must be about 3 or 4 years ago now. It might even have been before the COVID, but I can't quite remember. And I actually went on my own that night because I knew the group that was holding the investigation. So I was happy to sort of hook up with them for the evening and do the investigation. And it was a summer's evening, and we got there at 7 o'clock in the evening, so it was still broad daylight. And from the moment we set foot, things started happening, and they just went on. I think we finished about 2 o'clock in the morning, and they just went on constantly for that entire period. It was absolutely phenomenal, the amount of activity we got that night. But strangely enough, going back to what I was saying earlier about sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't, I was actually back there about 6-7 weeks ago because I was giving an in-person talk to a group about what I do and ghosts and what have you. And that was in the evening, and because it was winter time, it was dark, so you'd think it'd be a good time for things to happen. And we were there I gave an hour's long talk, so altogether we were probably there about an hour and a half, hour and 3/4. Not one single thing happened. Nothing. So, and yet this other night, it had not stopped for the entire time we were there.
Is it possible that these paranormal occurrences happen when certain people are present, and if that person isn't present or in their group, that for one reason or another, the paranormal activity isn't there?
Well, it's entirely possible because the group that I went with when everything was happening, that group is led by a medium, and she's quite a good medium. It's a group called Paranormal here in the UK. So whether it's her presence there that allows it to happen, but she always says funnily enough, that whenever I come along on one of the investigations, things tend to ramp up. When I'm present, and she always makes a joke about, because it's the ghosts like to get into my books and get written about. So they're sort of keen to make themselves known. And it is true, a lot of the investigations I've been on with that group, there's been a lot of activity around the room I'm in. But whether that's just pure coincidence or what, I don't know. Whether it was just the time of year, it was summer before when we went, it was winter this time when I was last there. It's so hard. You'd have to do such a lot of sort of subject testing, wouldn't you, to work out if there was a parameter to why some nights it was active and some nights it wasn't.
What kind of paranormal activity was there?
Well, from the moment we walked in, what we'd done is we'd set up torches all around the room. So on every windowsill there was a torch, which was one of the type that if you screw the end in, the light comes on, and if you unscrew the end, the light goes off. And you can set them so they're just on the point of hovering between on and off. And the idea is it doesn't take much for a spirit to nudge it to on or nudge it to off. And from the moment we set foot into the building, these torches kept going on and off on all the windowsills.
Wow.
And at first you'd think it was quite random, but we got several sequences where we managed to get about a 10-minute long sequence of asking the torches to switch on, to switch off, to switch on as a yes or switch off as a no. And we even had one point when we managed to say, can the torch on that windowsill turn on? And it would turn on. Now could you turn it off? It would turn off. Okay, now go to the torch on the next windowsill along, turn it on, it would turn on. Now turn it off, please, it would turn off. Right round the room, about 4 or 5 torches round the room. But we also had a couple of Ouija boards going. I know there's a lot of different opinions out there about Ouija boards, and I personally won't touch one. But I will at least agree to be present in the room while somebody else is doing them now. The 2 Ouija boards that we tried that night got really active. We were getting a lot of answers through on that. And most amazingly, at one point during the night, we had 2 groups, one investigating upstairs, one investigating downstairs, and we'd swap over periodically. And at one point in the evening, the group upstairs was getting a load of answers on their Ouija board that appeared to make no sense until we compared notes at the break point where we all went and had a coffee and what have you. And it turned out that it was answering the questions that were being asked on the Ouija board by the downstairs group at the same time.
Ruth, I have to ask you to hold on. We've got to take a commercial break. We'll continue this very interesting story on the other side of this break. Exonation, our guest this hour is Ruth Roper WYLDE, and on Facebook, just go to facebook.com/Ruth Roper WYLDE. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell, and the topic of this hour is paranormal research, talking to an author and a researcher in the United Kingdom. You're listening to the X Zone on the X Zone Broadcast Network and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ, sorry about that, guys, in St. Catharines, Ontario, streaming at classic1220.ca. And welcome back. I'm Rob McConnell. My guest this hour here in the X Zone is Ruth Roper WYLDE, and on Facebook, it's facebook.com/Ruth Roper WYLDE, and that's RUTHROPERWYLDE. All right, I'm sorry we had to stop for that commercial break, but let's get back to the story. I've got a question to ask you about the torches, or what we call over here on this side of the pond, or flashlights. Is there any explanation on how a spirit that is invisible, has no weight, has no mass, can actually turn a torch on?
I have no idea is the simple answer to that one. But having grown up in a house with an active poltergeist, I know it's absolutely possible. I know when you hear about poltergeist stories, you know, on TV or on the news or whatever, what you usually hear people say is, I put my cup down on the side and I turned away for a moment and I looked back and the cup had moved to the other side. Or I walked into the room, closed the cupboard door perhaps, walked out of the room, walked back in 10 seconds later and the cupboard door was open again. So the activity happens out of sight in effect. In my house, when I was growing up, it didn't bother with that kind of subterfuge. It would just do it right in front of you. So if the cup was going to move or the door was going to open or something was going to get flung across the room, it did it right in front of you. So you physically saw whatever it was get moved and shoved across the place. And it would do that quite regularly. So the idea that something can manage to physically interact with our physical world is quite normal to me in a way. Normal's probably too strong a word, but I've seen it, so I find it easier to accept it because I've lived with it and seen it. So when you talk about the torches, to me it doesn't seem so odd that they could actually, if they wanted to, manipulate them.
Is it possible that the turning on and off of the torches was actually caused by psychokinesis, that somebody in the group that was there actually had the ability through their own mind to manipulate, without knowing it, the lights going on and off?
I've often wondered about that, you know, because the thing with the torches, and this is the real weakness with using torches the way they do, is that you set them in such a way that they're only a hair trigger off either being on or off. You know, it's the tiniest of movements. So, yeah, if we accept that it's a possibility for the mind to manipulate matter like that, then, yeah, that's an absolute possibility. I've also been on quite a few ghost hunts where the torches have been going on and off, but they don't appear to be doing it in any way in response to the people present. So they don't appear to be answering questions or doing it on request or anything. They're just flashing on and off randomly. And I've often wondered, when that happens, and there appears to be no rhyme or reason to when they go on and off, is it just a slight fluctuation in the temperature that's just enough for the metal of the torch, because they've usually got metal bodies, these
that's
torches,
right, yeah.
for the metal to just expand or contract that tiny little bit enough to make the connection? And is that why sometimes you just get a completely random set of torch flashing that doesn't seem to be in response? But the ones that are really interesting is when you get whole runs of the torch doing what you ask it to do. And then, yes, is that something stood next to the torch doing it that we don't yet have an actual explanation for? I know we like to refer to it as spirit, and certainly somebody who's a medium or whatever would definitely refer to it as spirit. Or is it something like you're describing, where actually we as humans have a greater capability than we're aware of, and we're somehow willing that to happen? Who knows? That's the everlasting fascination.
There are still a lot of unknowns when it comes to investigating the paranormal, especially when dealing with spirits, ghosts, and poltergeists. Have you yourself ever seen a full-bodied apparition?
Yes.
What's that like?
And it scared the living daylights out of me, I have to tell you. I've seen lots and lots of shadow figures over the years. You know, shadows glimpsed moving. There's one particular ruined house near where I live called Houghton House. I think it's been ruined since about 1680 something or other, and it finally fell into complete ruin in the 1700s. but it was a magnificent country home at one point. Stands on a hillside with wonderful views, very beautiful. And I like to go up there quite often with my dogs because it's a lovely place to walk. And I have often seen shadow figures crossing the doorway. If you stand and look from a distance, there's a gateway you can lean on and look down the grand driveway to this ruined house. And I've often watched the shadow figures there. So they are, in some aspects, full-bodied apparitions. But the one I saw that absolutely terrified me was on a road not that far from where I live. It's one that I've got about 9 accounts now of people seeing. It's a heavy-set man. He's always described as a heavy-set man wearing a heavy... Do you remember the donkey jackets that were a real fashion item for a while?
Yes, I do.
Certainly here in the UK.
Yep.
Big, heavy jackets that came to sort of hip length, didn't they?
Yep.
And he's wearing something akin to one of those. Heavy-duty work trousers, heavy boots on his feet. Some people think he might have some sort of cap on that see him. Some people think his hair is free. When I saw him, he was facing away from me, so I never even saw his face or anything. And he had his shoulders hunched and his head bowed. So as I saw him from the back, you couldn't see much of his head shape, if you know what I mean. The night I saw him, I was driving my car. I was looking for him. I'd been looking for him for about a year at this point. Every time I drove that road every 2 weeks for a year. And the night I saw him for a total of maybe 4 seconds, because he appeared right close to the bonnet of my car. And obviously I was moving, so however long it took my car to pass him, basically. And then when I looked in the rearview mirror, he was gone. And throughout my whole life, whenever something has happened, and I've had a lot of experiences, I have always gone back and checked and tried to replicate it, because that's what my mother taught me to do. And this is the only time there was something about that figure that scared me so badly, even though he wasn't even looking at me or facing me. So I can't even explain to you why he scared me so badly, but he did. I could not persuade myself to turn that car around and go and look again. And it's now been, that was 2019, so this is coming up 5.5 years since I saw him. And I have not been able to bring myself to drive that road alone at night since. I can do it if my husband's in the car with me, that's fine. In fact, we drove it last night, funny enough. My husband and a friend of mine on the way back from somewhere. And I'm perfectly fine when there's somebody in the car with me, but I cannot bring myself to drive that road alone, because something about him was so scary. And yet he wasn't even looking at me, he was facing away. Go figure.
That is scary, as well as it defies logic on the effects that the paranormal have on people, whether they're in direct contact with it, indirect contact, or even some of the stories that are told by ghost tour operators to the people that are in their tour that night. Some of these stories change the lives of the people who hear them forever. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because it all depends on the person's own belief system and how they were brought up and in what culture. So if you're brought up, or you choose to be, however you come about your own beliefs, that you have no belief in the paranormal whatsoever, and I come across a lot of people that really, really have no time for this whatsoever. In their view, it's complete bunkum. We're all mad for thinking it happens. It's all just mass hysteria. There's nothing to it, and they're very set in that view. And I think some of those people, when something forces them to look at it, and that might be the telling of a particular story that for some reason grates a nerve, or it might be when they bump into the paranormal themselves, and that's it, your worldview is changed. You can't go back to a world where you knew the paranormal didn't exist. Once you've seen something or heard something that you have no explanation for. You're now the other side of that divide, and it doesn't matter what you want to be. That's where you are.
Ruth, when you're doing the research by yourself or with a group, how do you know that a ghost is around? Do you feel it? Do you feel a change in the temperature? Do you get any other physical or mental cues that something paranormal is here?
I definitely do. I think it's different for different individuals, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a friend of mine that often comes with me when we go on more commercial ghost hunts. Here in the UK, if you want to get access to some of the really, like a castle or a stately home or something like that, you pretty much have to go with a commercial organisation on an organised ghost hunt, because that's the only way you're going to get access to that building at night, which is fair enough, because there's insurance and health and safety and all that good stuff.
Right, yeah.
So she and I, when we're in a room or a group, we will often turn heads and look at each other, because we will both notice the moment the atmosphere changes, and it goes from there's nothing here to, oh my, something just came in the room. The room just started feeling really heavy, really dark. Something changed. And sometimes we'll do a ghost hunt and literally nothing happens all night, to be honest, of any note. Other people will be running around screaming, going, oh no, this happened. It really didn't. It was the floorboard creaking because somebody else was walking on it,
Sure.
But with those, you can pretty much walk in and think, this atmosphere is fine. It's absolutely fine. There's nothing here. Totally comfortable. But when something's about to happen, there is definitely the best I can describe it as, the way it feels to me.
All right, let's hold on to that.
Limit.
Let's hold on to that thought, because I do have to take my break at the bottom of the hour. Exo Nation, wow. Ghost hunting, ghost research from the United Kingdom with author and paranormal researcher Ruth Roper WYLDE. And if you'd like to find out more about Ruth, visit her on Facebook, facebook.com/Ruth Roper WYLDE. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. We're coming to you on the X Zone Broadcast Network and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ, here in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, streaming on classic1220.ca.
If I could turn back time, if I could find a way, I'd take back those words that hurt you, and you'd stay. I don't know why I did the things I did. I don't know why I said the things I said. Pride's like a knife, it can cut deep inside. Words are like weapons, they wound sometimes. I didn't really mean to hurt you. I didn't want to see you go.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. If you'd like to send me an email, the email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. And for all the great programming that we here at the X Zone Broadcast Network produce, just visit our website at www.xzbn.net. Our guest this hour is talking about ghost hauntings, things that go bump in the night. Her name is Ruth Roper WYLDE, and she is in the United Kingdom. She's an author of many books, and we're going to get to talk to Ruth about some of her books this hour. But I'd just like you to finish the topic that we were speaking about when you and your girlfriend were doing a paranormal investigation, and you were able to detect something.
Yeah, it's happened several times with that particular friend, but we've been in places where we're in the middle of a room and the group's doing whatever the group's doing, and the atmosphere has distinctly changed. And I remember one particular one that springs to mind was I have a mobility problem, so I can't go up down an awful lot of stairs. And this particular group I go with know that, and they let me do the parts of the building I can reach. And this particular building had been quite active all night. But in order to avoid the stairs, there was one part of the evening where there was just myself, my girlfriend, Kirsty, another lady I didn't know, and the lady who runs the events, who herself is a medium, in a room together. And it was an old school room dating back to the 1800s. And it was still decked out like an old school room. So it had wooden panelled walls. And we were sitting in children's wooden desks, you know, the type that was attached to the chairs, very common in England.
Over here too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they decided they wanted to do a Ouija board. And as I mentioned earlier, I won't touch a Ouija board. So my friend, Kirsty, and this other lady I didn't know were doing the Ouija board together. The lady who runs it, who is the medium, part of their rule when they're running these events is none of the staff, if you like, will touch the equipment while it's in use to prove that it's not them kind of rigging something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If anything happens, they're not even touching it, so it's clearly not them. So if you picture the scene, there's the two ladies sat together over the Ouija board. There's us other two sitting slightly apart. And they're doing this Ouija board. It's moving around a little bit and seems to be getting a little bit of traction, but nothing much. And all of a sudden, the hairs on the back of my neck went up. I got that involuntary shuddering feeling you get.
Yes.
I glanced across at the medium who runs it in time to see her glance across at me and kind of raise her eyebrows. And as we did, there was a loud knock on the wooden wall behind her. I mean, properly loud, like somebody banged their fist onto it. Before we had time to really react, although Kirsty and the other lady doing the Ouija board both squealed a bit and jumped, it then, a loud knock on the next wall along, then the wall opposite, and then the wall behind me. So it knocked once on each four walls of the room. And as Kirsty started to say, "What the hell is that?" it knocked once more under the desk that they'd got the Ouija board on. So it actually made the desk vibrate slightly as it knocked it. And it was interesting that both myself and the medium had picked up it was about to happen just before it happened, because we both kind of went, "Huh," and looked at each other seconds before that first knock. And she got on her radio and radioed the rest of the group that was elsewhere in the building and said, "Is anybody in this wing that we're sitting in? Is anybody in the crypt below it or the floors above it?" No. The other group was out in the car park at that moment in time. So whatever was making that noise was not natural.
Why do some spirits go to the other side, follow the light, and other spirits remain here? Some are benevolent, and others are mischievous, and some are just downright mean.
Rob, if we had the answer to that, that would be the end of paranormal investigation, full stop, wouldn't it? That's what we're trying to find out, really, is why? What is it? Are all these happenings, all these different types of phenomena? And if I'm now 10 books in, and there are dozens of different types of phenomena that happens in that, from balls of light to misty figures to sounds to completely normal people appearing in broad daylight and then disappearing in front of people. Everything you can imagine. Why have we got such a myriad of things happening, and what is the explanation behind that? Is it all just attributable to the idea of spirit and moving on or not moving on, or is there more at play there?
What is your opinion? What do you feel is causing this, or a hypothetical explanation with all your experience?
I hate being pushed into a corner, I have to say, because I still haven't made my mind up.
Okay.
Is the real truth behind that. If I have to have a view, I would say I actually think it's going to turn out to be that there are actually a number of different phenomena that have different causes, and that eventually we'll be able to say phenomena A, B, C fit into that category, and they're caused by X. Phenomena E, F, G fit into that category, and they're caused by Y. And I think people like me who just do the research and commit it to paper, so it's kind of put down for posterity, so it's a record of things that are happening, that's providing the database, if you like. Me and all the other researchers out there are providing the database that at some point somebody will be able to put all of this together, and they'll have that eureka moment, and they'll figure out what's causing what. Because I genuinely think some of the stuff I've got is clearly about a deceased person, a spirit, if you will. Some of the data I've got is clearly much more something elemental, something that was never human to begin with. And other things that God knows what category they fit into. You know, they just, wow, they're out there on their own somehow. So just my own data seems to be splitting into different things. And when you add it to other people's data, you know, and you add in the idea of cryptids and different dimensions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I think that will all end up to be, we're going to have to parslet different phenomena relates to a different type of cause. There's different cause and effect.
In your opinion, why is ghost hunting, ghost research, and other aspects of the paranormal so very popular still?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because it is really popular at the moment. There's no doubt about that. When I had my poltergeist, which was in the 1970s, you barely heard a thing about ghosts at that point in time. It was really hard to find information about ghosts, certainly here in the UK. It wasn't particularly popular. It had a real resurgence of popularity in the 1980s, seemed to die down a bit in the early 90s, and then it grew up again, sort of mid to late 90s, and has seemed to stay fairly popular ever since. So it seems to be a bit of a, you know, cyclical interest that people have in it. But this last decade or more seems to have really, really held on to the interest. I don't know why. I really don't know why. Whether it's because of we're all so used to having information at our fingertips now. You know, we carry around these amazingly powerful little computers in our hands now, don't we?
We sure do.
And yeah, and modern generation who grew up with computers probably don't think of their phones like that. But for somebody like me who grew up before there was even such a thing as a mobile phone, you know, I still remember the very first mobile phone and what a wow it was. To think that you can carry that much information at your fingertips and look it up anywhere at any time. So if somebody has an interest in any subject, they can be tapping into it and reading about it and engaging with podcasts or radio shows, etc., etc. Even as they're walking the dog or doing their housework or on the bus on the way to work, we all have that capability of total information overload all the time. And I think that does help people to stay more interested in a subject, because they've got access to more and more varied ways of engaging with it.
We have 2 minutes before I have to go to my next, the final break. My question is, at what age should someone who wants to be a paranormal investigator contact groups and really get into the meat of it?
I wouldn't recommend any younger than, say, 16 or 17.
Okay.
Myself, personally. Simply because I think you're still forming your own life views. You don't want to be sort of too influenced by things any earlier than that. I think parental control has to come in a bit here, because your parents will know whether you can, how much you can cope with. You know, different children will cope with different levels of scary film, for example, won't they?
Sure.
And I think exposing them to genuine scares, I think is quite risky if you can avoid it. I think you should be, like I say, in the cusp of adulthood before you start actively getting involved in researching it. And I know I'm the pot calling the kettle black there because I was younger than that when I started researching. But
Yes.
I was kind of thrust in with no choice.
I was just going to say, you had the experience. You had to do
Yeah.
it.
I had no choice. It's like, why has that knife just flown across the kitchen?
Yeah. You and I have to take our final break, so please stand by. And Exxon Nation, if you'd like to find out more about our guest this hour. Very, very, very knowledgeable young lady. She's an author. We're going to be talking about some of her books when we come back. I'll just give you a little bit of a teaser. The Ghost of Marston, Vale, The Almanac of British Ghosts, The Roadmap of British Ghost, Volumes 1, 2, and let me see, These Haunted Times, Volume 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then, you ready for this one? These Haunted Times, Volume 5, America. More questions, more answers, more questions, and the more questions you get a couple of answers, and those answers just lead us into more questions. Maybe one day we'll find out. Maybe one day we'll find out right here on the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center in St. Catharines, Ontario, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and streaming around the world on your hometown radio, Classic 1220.ca. We'll both be back on the other side of this break, so whatever you do, don't go away.
If I could turn back time, if I could find a way, I'd take back those
And welcome back, everyone. During the commercial break, did anybody see a ghost? Did a knife go flying by you? How about a coffee cup? No? Well, your house isn't haunted then. But our guest this hour actually lived in a haunted house, experienced the paranormal herself, was so intrigued about the paranormal that she became an author. And Ruth, how many books have you written to date?
10 now. I intended to write one, and then I got a bit excited and thought, I might write 2. And then I got a bit more excited and thought, yeah, go on, there's a 3rd one in here. And then it became like painting the 4th bridge, which is a saying we have here in the UK. And you can just never put it down once you get started. It becomes addictive. So, yes, 10.
God bless you. Ruth, where do you get the stories from? Do you actually do the research, or do people come to you with stories?
So I start out with a source story that I found somewhere.
Okay.
So this might be a story I found online or in a book or in a magazine or whatever that piques my interest because there's an element of it where people have seen it within my lifetime. So it's a modern haunting. It might go back centuries, but it's still active in modern times. That's what tends to pique my interest. And then what I'll do is I'll go out on social media in that particular location. So for most of my books, that's been in the UK. But the most recent book, it's been in America. And I will literally ask the question, once I can get in on the social media, has anybody experienced anything odd in this location? And I'm always very careful not to say what it's meant to be haunted by, because I want people's own experiences. Because I very often find that one location has a myriad of different experiences within it. And what I find then is people will write back and say either yes or no, they have or haven't there. And people will, then there's a third category where people will write back and say, well, no, I haven't seen anything there. Where I work is haunted, or where I go for drink is haunted, or the restaurant I visit is haunted, or I saw one on a road somewhere once, or I went hiking and I saw one, and they give me their account for somewhere else, which this is why I say it's like the fourth bridge, which then, of course, goes on my database. And the next time I'm doing a round of posting out, I call them my ghost posts, putting out on social media, looking for people to connect with, I then include that location, and the whole cycle starts again. But yeah, so that's how it occurs. Is something catches my eye to begin with, and then it just kind of networks out from there.
What, in your opinion, has been the most frightening story that somebody has brought to you?
In this latest book, the American one, I don't think it's necessarily the most frightening for anybody, but it's the one that gave me the creeps the most. And this was from Urbana in Illinois. So Urbana is a town that's adopted in 1834. And in 1871, some children playing with matches accidentally set the town on fire. And there was a really bad fire because they were having a drought at the time. So it affected a whole load of buildings in the town. I was originally drawn to asking about that and going onto the social media around Urbana because I'd heard about a haunting at Clement Cemetery. And this is a cemetery that's even older than the town itself, quite possibly. And it's got a legend of a ghost who is a glowing orb of blue light. So that's what I kind of picked up on as something interesting. But when I went out on social media, just the way I've described, I'm using a pseudonym here because people tend to prefer to have pseudonyms rather than their real name. But a lady called Joni wrote to me and she said, about 5 miles away from that cemetery, there used to be an old abandoned house on the corner which had a separate detached garage. And in the 1970s, she and her best friend from school went out there one day exploring for something to do, kicking around inside the old house. It was quite dilapidated, quite run down, and they were able to get inside it because it had been, abandoned for some time at this point. And they'd gone onto the upstairs of the house and were rummaging around and found a box of old photographs. Most interestingly, these photographs all showed signs of having been singed around the edges as if they'd been in a fire. There's nothing odd about the photographs themselves, just family snaps type things. But the burnt edges gave the two girls a bit of a creepy vibe. So they kind of thought, we've seen enough there, feeling a bit creeped out now. So they went back downstairs, wandered back outside the building, where they'd already spent some time before they went into the house. And to their astonishment, there was a child's football sitting on the walkway between the house and the garage, which had definitely not been there when they went in. Wondering where it come from, they picked it up and realised that one side of it had a big patch burnt out of it, like it had also been in a fire.
Wow.
And as Joni said, needless to say, we just got the hell out of there. And there's just something, it's such a simple little story.
Yes, it is.
But there's something really creepy about a town that had this problem with the fire that was caused by children, and then children coming across this remnants and this football that appears as if somebody places it there for them to find that has burn marks on it.
After writing all the books you have written over the years, what is your favorite book?
Oh, well, I did actually really enjoy writing this American one, to be honest. Normally, my favourite ghosts to write about are road ghosts, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed Roadmap 1 and 2. But the American book that I've just written has got a smattering of both road ghosts and hauntings in buildings. Because I was kind of venturing out with a whole new thing with engaging with America to see if people would talk to me on social media the way they will in the UK. So I actually really enjoyed this because I'd accidentally written 2 books in 1 year, the year before, so in 2023. So last year, 2024, it was just really refreshing to go across the pond, as it were, and engage with a slightly different cultural view on the paranormal, and just talk with people over there. And I had some fascinating conversations and video conversations with people. So I actually really, really enjoyed writing this one.
Where do you see paranormal investigation as we get into the next phase of computer technology using artificial intelligence?
Oh, now that's a really good question, because I'm not techie enough to have a good answer about artificial intelligence. The only thing I can tell you about it at the moment is I've noticed when I'm researching that when you use a search engine, you now often get a little panel at the start of your search results that's an AI-generated preview. And I've already noticed that in this early stage of AI, I'm sure it's going to improve. If I ask, for example, I've put in my search parameters that I want to find haunted related to a certain building in a certain town, and I've restricted my search parameters to bring that up, the little AI-generated panel will sometimes say, oh yes, the such and such a building you're looking at has got 6 different ghosts associated with it, and it'll list them and give me links to them, which on the face of it you think, oh, that's really helpful. But if you took it at face value like that, you would half get into a world of trouble quickly, because when you click on the links, they're nothing to do with that building.
Mm.
One of them might be, but the other 5, no. They're a completely different building in a different town. So at the moment, that it's obviously still learning, but I think it's going to be one of those areas to watch, without a doubt. But don't ask me any more than that, because I am not techie enough. This is the girl who grew up without computers, remember?
I certainly do. In the next minute, what is the message that you would like to share with the X Zone Nation tonight?
Well, I'm really excited about my next venture, which is coming out in about a month, and that's These Haunted Times Volume 5 America is going to be my first audio book as well. And it should be out and available within about a month, and it's actually been a Canadian who I've been collaborating with to be the voice of the recording.
Mm-hmm.
So one of your compatriots, and that should be out within a month. So I will be moving slightly more techie for my comfort zone, away from the written word. Not away from, I'll be doing the books as well, but including them as audio books going forward. So I'm really excited about that. So keep your eyes open for that, people.
We sure will. And I would imagine that all your books are available through your through your Facebook page, as well as Amazon and other online bookstores.
Yeah. So you can find them on most online bookstores.
Mm-hmm.
You can get them in physical bookstores as well if you just ask them to stock them or pull them. But yeah, Amazon is the easiest place to find them. Just look up Ruth Roper WYLDE, spelt the slightly odd way I spell it, and they all come up. And they're available in paperback, ebook, or Kindle Unlimited. If you have the subscription, you can read them for free.
Ruth, let our listeners know how they can find out more about you, because I'm sure you have a lot of people listening tonight who are saying, I've got to find out more about this lady.
Just drop me an email. ruthroperwylde@gmail.com. And I would love to chat with them.
Well, we'll have to have you back on the show with your new book. And please, just keep on doing the great job you're doing. I love the way you think. I love the way that you look at life. And I love the way that you investigate the paranormal.
It's been so nice to talk to you again, Rob. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Take care of yourself. And from our family to yours, a very happy Easter season.
And to you.
Yeah, all right, so long now. Exonation, my guest this hour has been Ruth Roper WYLDE. If you'd like to find out more about Ruth, you could go to her Facebook page at facebook.com/Ruth Roper WYLDE, and that's RUTHROPER WYLDE. And her books are available on Amazon.com and on, I would imagine, all the other online bookstores and brick and mortar stores as well. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as hour number 2 of the X Zone starts right now on the X Zone Broadcast Network and your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ AM in St. Catharines, streaming on classic1220.ca.